Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do.
In this episode, I interview Jonathan Petz, co-founder and CEO of Upsolver, whose decade of work has guided tens of thousands of low-income Americans through some of the darkest moments of their lives to a fresh start. Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host. I'm thrilled today to have on Jonathan Petz. He is the co-founder and CEO of Upsolver, who's made like a gigantic impact over the past 10 years. Yes, it's been 10 years. And I'm really happy to have him here. How are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. You know, you've been leading the way in terms of access to justice and using technology in a way that's really impactful. So I'm excited to talk to you about what Upsolver is doing, what you're working on. And are you in Boston right now?
I am, yeah. Right now, I work in Cambridge, which is right across from MIT, Goodwill Hunting land.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to be out there next week.
Oh, cool. We should meet up for a coffee. I would love that.
So I want to ask, currently with Upsolver, I know one of the latest initiatives is an AI paralegal. Is that right?
That's what we call it. I can give you some context. We have this tool, which is basically TurboTax for bankruptcy for low-income folks who can't afford lawyers. We have 56,000 people each year who start this tool and don't get to the end of it. And part of the reason is because they can't get the support they need. We have 3 paralegals who are supporting these 56,000 people, in addition to the 6,000 that do use the tool and do successfully get a fresh start. As you can imagine, that's a lot for any paralegal to handle when you start talking about tens of thousands of people. We asked ourselves, like, generative AI is exciting, it's growing really fast. Is there any potential for how it could help us help more of the folks who are eligible for our tool, who are starting it, but who just are dropping off and aren't able to get the help that they need? So what we did is we built inside of our tool an assistant we call AI Paralegal. And what it does is, as you're going through the tool, you can imagine, like, filing for bankruptcy is like really stressful. There's a lot of shame. People are really afraid. Am I going to lose my assets? Some people are worried, am I going to go to jail for this? And so folks have so many questions. So we built this assistant to just answer people's questions on demand instead of having to email our paralegals and then wait days for a response. In which case, life just sort of happens and people can't get the help that they need. And so we built this chat bot. But I think the thing that was really important about it is that the chatbot understands your context. So where you are in the app, you've answered questions about your expenses, and now you're talking about your income. Do you have any income from, let's say, food stamps? And the chatbot will know where you are in the flow, so it can answer questions that you're having in a way that understands your context. And we found that has been really valuable for a significant percentage of the folks who are going through our process.
Wow, it's really amazing that it could help to reduce that friction. 56,000 people not making it through. And I'm sure that's the before picture. I mean, there's probably an after picture in terms of the numbers of people that are now getting through with the AI paralegals help. Like, what are a couple of the common issues that were friction points that were stopping people short?
There's a mixture of, like, one, simple, like, tech support stuff. People would have to ask, like, how do I upload this PDF? Or they'll upload a document like a tax return, but they're not actually uploading the tax return. They're uploading their pay stub, for example. And then the paralegal would have to then look at the document and say, hey, this isn't actually a tax return. And then email folks back and be like, okay, upload it. And now what the AI paralegal does is it sees, hey, this isn't a tax return, upload. This is what a tax return looks like. You need to upload that before you continue.
That's such a great example, because I think I think when a lot of people think about AI, it's all like the Matrix and all crazy,
Yeah.
agents, AI agents all the way down, and it's just like super, super sophisticated. But sometimes the most meaningful ways that we can intervene to help people help themselves is with something as straightforward as that. And now that, there are models that are vision enabled, natively multimodal, they can literally look at the form and deduce that it's not the right form. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Any notion of like how this has helped reduce the friction? Have the numbers gone up?
So last year, bankruptcy filings in the US went up 15%. So it's like rising financial distress. But the number of people that we helped get a fresh start rose 115%. Part of that is, more people coming to us for help. But a big part of it is more people are now getting through the process. More people were starting it or finishing it. And the AI has been a big piece of that. Deflecting, I guess it would be the technical term, about 50% of questions that were previously going to our paralegals. Basically, what that allows them to do is, stretch their help to help more people. This is probably the more interesting stat is we 4x'd the number of people that each paralegal could serve last year. And AI wasn't the only part of that, but it was an important part. And people that use the AI are finishing at a 3 times higher rate. There hasn't been a randomized controlled trial we've run, but all of that gives us a lot of conviction that this AI tool to empower folks to unblock themselves, basically, is a really high leverage way to increase access.
So you've literally proven that the entire force multiplier thesis is real, that your paralegals have been able to, scale their help with it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's not just AI, but AI is an important piece of that.
Well, that's great. And it's a good teaser of where we're going to go later on. But as my audience knows, I love to ask people about, where they grew up, what their childhood was like, and like early influences. And so I'd like to ask you some of those questions, Jonathan, if that's okay.
Yeah, I would love to.
You're in Boston, as we established Cambridge. Did you grow up there?
No, I'm a native New Yorker, Manhattan.
Okay. And what part of Manhattan? Where was your local haunt?
The Upper East Side.
What was it like in that neighborhood? Just to give us like a little feel of what it was like.
I mean, growing up in Manhattan is exciting because there's like everything is going on. I guess part of that question is like, what were my parents like? Because that actually had a big influence on, my experience growing up in New York. My dad was this immigrant from England and had no education after age 17. So his big ambition for his sons was, to go to great schools and get the education he didn't get, and then become a Wall Street lawyer, basically. My brother actually just made partner at a large law firm, and like that was sort of my path for the first 34 years of my life. I was, executing my dad's plan perfectly.
Let me ask you a little bit about your parents, though. Like,
Yeah, please.
so your mom and dad, what kind of work did your dad do? What did your mom do? And what was that family like early on?
Yeah, my mom was a professional mom. I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and we kept her pretty busy. My dad was a consumer banker, so he worked at a bank in the UK and got brought here to grow it in the US. And so you can think about it as kind of like the Bank of America of England. And it ended up getting acquired by Bank of America here in the US. My mom's from California, very like easygoing social person. And my dad was sort of like the stiff upper lip Englishman, like very, he taught me a lot about honor and dignity and fair play. And also, taught me a bunch of stuff that, I spent the rest of my life sort of rebelling from. But that's a story for, maybe another day.
I think it's, a common story for all of us. It's part of growing up, right? Are you the oldest?
I am the oldest, yeah.
Well, I have two daughters, and my oldest tends to be a little more practical planner. Do you think that's true with you and your siblings? Like, that pattern's repeated itself?
I think I started out that way. I think my younger brother now is like Mr. Efficiency, Mr. Practical. And I sort of became the black sheep of the family, which is funny to think about. Growing up, I was very much like, what are the things that I'm supposed to be doing? And like, let me go do them now.
You ended up going to University of Pennsylvania and majoring in English. From your mom and dad, you had mentioned that your father thought kind of like the professional path was the way to go. But from both of them, was there anything from like an early age in particular about what kind of profession you would pursue, or was that kind of left to your own devices?
I think that was left to my own devices. I think the thing that I got from my parents was just a really love and a passion for the written word. When you think about different cultures of the world and in England, we definitely don't have the best food. We don't necessarily have great art, but England has the best storytellers in the world. You've got Shakespeare, you've got Jane Austen, you've got Charles Dickens. These are the best folks to ever do it, in my opinion. And so growing up, I was really constantly, exposed to like great stories and great storytelling.
I think that's half the battle there because, as we all know, people respond to stories. When it comes to like numbers and technical stuff, we kind of can lose the thread of it. But being able to tell a good story is a way to capture people's attention and help to relate what you're trying to communicate. Did you learn some of that at University of Pennsylvania? Were there any professors there that really influenced you in that way?
Wow, that is something. I mean, so I was an English major, so I read a lot of stories.
Yeah.
I think I had one professor who was it was a course about Greek tragedy. I think I was like forced to take this course, and it was so foreign to me, like this idea that and so old and scripted and unapproachable. And this professor really made me understood how emotionally powerful these stories were and how resonant they were. Yeah, I think that would be the professor who sticks out the most. But I had some amazing, amazing professors now that I think back and like really have been so blessed in that area of my life.
Well, some of us that end up going to law school, like on the one hand, we might go because since we were a little kid, we just like our personality was disposed to it, like to argue, maybe even had parents or relatives say, you would make a good lawyer. But then on the other hand, there's some of us that didn't have that initial drive from being a kid, that it was just something more practical. Like for me, I majored in philosophy, so I wasn't intending to become a professor, so going to law school made sense. What was that path like for you?
Yeah, I think it was actually very similar for me. I was an English major, so I liked to read and write, and I didn't want to be a professor. And so, I was like, oh, law, that seems like like the natural place for me.
So you ended up going to University of Pennsylvania Law School. Did you have a particular focus in mind when you went to law school about what kind of law or how you wanted to focus your energy, or did you just
Yeah.
go there to kind of take it in?
I think I went to take it in, but I think I had this idea of like, wouldn't it be great if I was like a litigator arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court and shaping the law of the land like David Boies? Like maybe that's who I wanted to be when I grew up.
Yeah, so like the vision of the grand argument in front of a jury, and
Yeah.
yeah, when you went to law school, like that was part of the vision. Did you have any externships or any work that you did where you got to work in a practical setting?
My first year of law school, I was like, struggling. I was like really stressed out with school and like I didn't really have time to like, okay, now I'm going to go look for like my summer internship. I was like just dreading it. And so I waited to like the last minute to like start reaching out. And so I was like, oh, I'll reach out to judges. I'll be an intern for a judge. And like all the district court and court of appeals internships had been filled like, months earlier. So I reached out to some bankruptcy judges in New York, where I was, and a newly appointed bankruptcy judge in Brooklyn named Elizabeth Stong was one of the people that I had reached out to. And this is the summer of 2005. And so The summer 2005 was a really important time in bankruptcy because it was the first time in the last, I don't know how many decades that the bankruptcy law changed fundamentally in America. And it became much harder to access. And so there was something happening that summer where everyone was saying, hey, this is the last, even though it wasn't true, they're like, this is the last time you're going to be able to file bankruptcy in the summer. So you could imagine the clerk's office of the courts were totally besieged with folks saying, I need to file bankruptcy today. I don't know how to do it. And so I got an internship for her sitting in the clerk's office, helping pro se filers that summer.
Wow.
And that was sort of what set me on this path, I guess.
Yeah, I remember that. I think it was George W., right? Like who had
I think so, yeah.
signed the law. Like it used to be, yeah, you're right, much easier. But what was one restriction that they added to it?
The big thing was more for middle income folks. So it became, if you were a middle income person, it became harder to file Chapter 7, which is the chapter where you can erase all your debt. And more folks are being pushed into Chapter 13, where you have to pay it off over a 5-year period. It didn't affect low income folks who I was interacting as much, but there was just this perception among everyone, regardless of income, like this is my last opportunity to file bankruptcy.
Yeah. So you must have been pretty busy then.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it was also crazy, like how ridiculously complicated the paperwork was. So what people were doing was they were going to Staples and they were buying for like $29.99 this packet of federal bankruptcy forms. It was like a folio sort of thing where you wrote on the first page and you would get like 2 copies underneath. So you'd pull out the copies and like keep them for yourself, basically. So everyone was coming into the clerk's office with these $29.99 sets from Staples. And we're like, how do I fill this out? And then we'd have to explain in plain language what this crazy legalese meant. We'd have to organize the forms, give them the local forms that weren't in the Staples packet. And it just left me with just seeing the relief on people's face when they actually were able to just submit these, 100 pages of legalese to the clerk's office. And all of a sudden, the debt collection calls stop, the debt lawsuits stop, and they have this fresh start on the horizon. So I saw that, but then I also saw like just how insanely unnecessarily complicated and painful this process was from a bureaucratic perspective. And that left me with this idea that there has to be a better way.
I remember getting some work in law school and then out of law school, and that ability to like just intensively get exposed to something like firsthand, like you did, where you're thrown in the mix with people that are the people that are the petitioners that are declaring bankruptcy and trying to figure out all of those questions that are common. It's not like it's a unique thing or a unique experience. Taking that all in, it must have been extremely exhausting, but also rewarding.
It was really rewarding seeing people get a fresh start, but it also made me really angry. Like, why is it so hard? Why do you have to fill out 100 pages of dense legalese in order to, access this legal process that's, guaranteed by the Constitution? I think the answer at the end of the day is that these forms were designed by well-intentioned experts, but those experts weren't talking to the folks that I was talking to in Brooklyn who were super low income, who couldn't afford lawyers, and they weren't designed with those folks in mind. And that, I believe, is like the cardinal sin of so much of our consumer legal system in the US, is it's just not designed with the folks who it's intended to serve at the table.
100%. After that experience, you did go to do the regular law firm thing for a couple of years.
I did, yeah.
What did that teach you about, working for a big firm? That experience, was it a good fit for you?
No, it was a terrible fit. So I got fired from 2 of those big firms that I went to, and my dad had been so proud, and I felt so ashamed that I couldn't hack it. The managing partner at the second firm, told me, Jonathan, you shouldn't be a lawyer. And I mean, I think what he was saying is like, I was good at the research and writing part of it, but my attention to detail is horrific. And that's, as it turns out, that's an important thing to be a lawyer, to be a good one. I came to faith as a Christian during this period and, was just praying like, God, where are you leading me? And, God made it really clear he was not like, my path was not in big law.
Well, certainly there are different types of lawyers, especially now, 10 years after the fact, from then. There's many more opportunities. And I think, you have been a bit of a pioneer in piecing together those different ways of developing it on your own, like a different way of being a lawyer. And I think it's a really great thing for law students that are coming out now. They have many more options than we did back in the day.
Amen. That is a great thing to be coming out of law school now.
The step after that was Upsolve. Like we mentioned at the top, it's been 10 years now. How did you meet your co-founder? Like, how did that come together?
Yeah, it's a wild story. So that judge, after I had gotten fired from the second law firm, my mom said something which actually was really pivotal for me. My entire identity was being this corporate lawyer, which I was told that I was terrible at. So I had so low confidence. And what she told me was, when you have no confidence, the thing to do is to find someone you can serve, because service connects you with everything you have to give, and that builds confidence. And so I asked myself, okay, like, who have I made an impact on in the last few years? And immediately the answer was the pro bono bankruptcy cases that I had done. I had helped a woman named Keisha in Brooklyn. She had gotten in a car accident, lost her job. She was, I think, $40,000 in medical debt. And I helped her get a fresh start. She called me back a year later and was like this big success story. And she actually called herself Keisha 2.0 because she had this vision of what was possible for her future. And so I was like, okay, I definitely made an impact on Keisha. What would it take to help more folks like Keisha? I can't be a pro bono lawyer for everyone. I reached out to the judge who I'd interned for in Brooklyn, and I was like, Judge, I'm interested in doing this like kind of nonprofit TurboTax for bankruptcy, maybe. And I don't really know what it is. She's like, okay, I'm having this pro bono lunch next week at the court in Brooklyn. Just stop by. And so I did. The first person in the lunchroom was Rohan Pavluri, who at the time was a sophomore undergrad at Harvard. And I asked him, hey, what are you doing? What are you here for? And he's like, oh, I'm building a nonprofit TurboTax for bankruptcy. So I was like, wow. And believe it or not, Rohan was like a tech person and like could actually understand. I just brought the legal understanding and like having done this as a pro bono lawyer. But we just started in his co-working spot the next day. And he was like, we're going to make a spreadsheet and we're going to put all these crazy legalese questions in column 1. And then we're going to put like how to say it in plain language and like the branching logic outside of that in column 2 and 3. And I was like, okay, this seems like a terrible idea, but I don't have anything else better to do. And so we started like that. And then we were basically a brick and mortar legal aid agency in Brooklyn. So I was just volunteering to like help low income Brooklynites, and they'd come to our office and we put the questions in the spreadsheet into basically a type form, like a Google form.
Yeah.
And then we just sit there and just watch them answer it. And then manually, this was the most painful part, Tom. We'd take all of their answers and then we'd manually type it into the 90-page PDF.
Oh, wow.
And we'd have to print that out and, help them go down the street to file it. Yeah, I'm so grateful to be, to be out of that phase of Upsolver.
Yeah, that is not the scaling solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, Paul Graham, the person who started Y Combinator, has this mantra that was really influential for us at starting. It's like, when you're starting, do things that don't scale, because then you can really see what the pain points are and understand them and understand where the scalable solution would be.
Exactly. You got to know what you're doing first.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no better way than how you started, right in the thick of it. So I do remember back then too, hearing about Upsolve, you guys at Y Combinator, which was pretty unique, at the time, that there was like a legal tech type of business that Y Combinator was supporting and promoting. And I guess, what was that experience like?
It was amazing. I think we were one of three nonprofits in the batch. They kind of told the nonprofits, like, pretend you're a venture backed company like everyone else, and like have that ambition to like really, add a zero or a couple zeros to the number of people that you think you're capable of helping. Because no matter like what you think you're capable of, it's probably always more. And so we were in the same batch with a Deal, which is a company now that I think is like worth maybe $20 billion that does payroll internationally for contractors, and Kalshi, which is another like online sports betting unicorn. And we were like, in the same batch with these people. And every 2 weeks, we'd have to come back and report like how many more people we'd helped, just the same way everybody else did. And it was really fun because we were actually beating a lot of these nonprofits in terms of our impact growth every week. And it's just an amazing community. Growing up, I was like a professional tennis player, and I was professional, like an amateur tennis player, but like competitive one. And I always loved playing with people that were better than me because it forced me to like elevate my own game. And that's exactly how I felt with YC. Like the entrepreneurs that we were in the same batch of were like incredible. Just being in that community was just incredibly inspiring and elevating for our team.
That's fantastic. If I'm not wrong, they also provide you like with experts that give you like guidance on different parts of growing a company and how to do that at a venture type scale, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was the core. It's sort of like a university office hours, but with people who've actually grown something and built something and grown it to like really high levels of scale. So understand a lot of the blockers that get in folks' way.
Well, it seems now with, vibe coding, with the ability of people that are domain experts to take that and also unlock the ability to scale it up, given the easier access to programming via AI. There are many more people interested in expanding access to justice, which is a wonderful thing because we know that we've gone to countless conferences where the 92% of people that don't get served has been repeated over and over, and there hasn't really been a tool or some way to bridge that gap. And it seems like things are coming together right now.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's something that a lot of them are missing in taking their first steps? Like maybe there's, words of advice that you might have about how they should approach a problem?
I think, one of the things that Eddie Hartman, who was a co-founder of LegalZoom, told me at the start of Upsolver, is like, there's a lot of legal problems that can be solved in the access to justice space with technology. But the thing that people don't think through at the start is how are you going to distribute the solution you're building? So I think thinking that through is really important because it's never been, as you say, it's never been easier to create useful solutions and never been cheaper. And the question is like, are you going to be able to get that solution in the hands of the people that need it?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree because if you create a better mousetrap but nobody knows about it, it's not going to get used. It's always been a challenge to get the word out. Then you think about marketing, you think about SEO or doing Google AdWords. That might be the old school way of doing it, and a very expensive way of doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Versus now, there's I don't know, social media, TikTok videos, other ways perhaps to spread the word. But yeah, it's a good one. It has to do with, I think, building communities of interest, common interest.
Yeah, it really depends on the problem you're solving, I think. But I think if you can build community, that's going to be something that would be, you know, very durable in terms of your impact, and harder for like the Googles of the world to disrupt.
I mean, what do you think about the landscape now? There's different states that for a while now, for years, have offered different types of sandboxes where companies that are legal adjacent or related or providing outright providing legal services, that they can have safe havens, like in Utah or Arizona and now Washington State. Do you think that's the right way to go? Or, and also, like, if you do, what are ways of doing that that you think are better? Like, for example, there's corporate licensing is one way. Then there's a sandbox where it's just like a carve out with an exemption, just go at it as long as you don't do any harm. What do you think are the better ways to approach that?
I think for a nonprofit, I don't really have as much exposure to these different regulatory regimes. I think from a first principles perspective, it's about asking, it's about framing it around consumer harm, like consumer benefit and consumer harm. We know consumers will benefit from more access. And I think the answer that we've always heard from bar associations is like there potentially could be some harm, and so we prevent this entirely. I think what Utah was really innovative about is this idea of the highest impact areas and the areas where if something goes wrong, it's not going to be a huge deal. And if it is a huge deal, it can be easily fixed. Like you could think about affirmative asylum applications. This would be something that's actually very, like, pretty easy to automate and expand access to. But if somebody uses it and doesn't get a good outcome, then they're leaving like their home in the United States and they're ending up in another country. That always needs to be in the province of lawyers. But there's many legal problems, like especially around consumer debt, our world, where that's not the case, right? The outcome is just the status quo continues. And I would love to see more sandbox innovation encouraging solutions to these kinds of problems.
What does the future for Upsolve look like? I mean, you've utilized a new approach to be able to spread the a helping hand to many more people over, what did you say, 150% more people or 115?
15.
Yeah, 15. That's amazing. So what do you think goes beyond that? How to spread the wealth of legal services even more?
Well, I think for us, one of the biggest lessons that a few years ago, I had this idea. Wouldn't it be great if we could expand this Upsolve model to all of these other access to justice areas where people need help that are form-based? And we did a pilot with immigration, also looked at debt lawsuits. And the thing that we learned, and our bankruptcy service got way worse at the time.
Hmm.
And the thing that I've learned is it's really hard to do two things at once. Basically, that building one good access to justice tool and making it if it's not getting better, it's getting worse. That's a big learning for me. And so we're constantly focused on how can we make it better every year and just reach more and more people to help them get a fresh start, and then maybe more just share the learnings that we've had from some of those failures so that folks can take them in other domains.
Well, that sounds like really good advice. Before we close out, though, I do want to ask you a couple questions I ask everyone. The first one has to do with, like, obviously you have a lot going on, and people are always interested in how to keep a work-life balance. And do you have any advice for them about that?
I think I should be asking, probably you, Tom, and probably some of your other guests, because I don't feel like I'm doing this very well right now. And actually it feels pretty unsustainable. My work-life balance, I have two younger daughters, one 5, one 2, and a wife that I love a lot. And I think Upsolve has taken like a disproportionate amount of my focus and attention. I'm really excited. I'm going on a sabbatical for 3 months once I hit the 10-year mark this summer. So I'm going to make some progress on this, and hopefully I'll have a better answer for you at that point.
All right. Well, I'll check in with you about that. But the sabbatical sounds like a fabulous idea, and get to spend more time with your girls. So that's awesome. The last question I have is, at the end of the day, after doing all of these different things, what makes it worthwhile for you?
I think there's two things. One is the people that I get to work with, because our mission it's not something that a lot of the world really understands, like bankruptcy, a fresh start actually being a good thing. But the people who do understand it know the difference that it makes in the life of a low income family, and So I get to work with some like really talented people that are really mission driven. I look around and I'm like, I need to step my game up just to keep up with, the rest of the people on the team. And that's inspiring. And I get so much energy from that. The other thing is our work is totally digital. So I don't really get to meet any of the people that are using our tool. But every day or every other day, I'll wake up to a new Google review to someone who I've never met in, who knows what part of the country, that talks about how Upsolve guided them through one of the darkest times of their life to a better future. And some of these reviews, oh, and now on TikTok, if you search Upsolve on TikTok, which I do probably once a week now, you'll see a new video of someone who's used the tool, and they are like dancing in a lot of these videos. And that is like, just gives me so much energy to keep going. And like, how do we move from helping 6,000 people go through this to 10,000? And, that is really like the best part of my day.
That's wonderful. And I think in a way it brings it full circle because it's about positive, hopeful stories and stories that we can tell each other about the promise that the world and life has.
Yeah, amen to that.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure to speak with you and learn more about you and Upsolve and your journey.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. This is such a pleasure.
For the audience that wants to keep in touch, learn more about you and Upsolve, how can they do that?
You can just drop me a line at jonathan@upsolve.org, and I'm pretty responsive via email, so I would love to hear from you.
Awesome. And for all of you out there watching, thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.